Well, speaking of going away quickly, let's talk about the talent roster and the viewership of AEW in this week in wrestling, because all of them are good. No, they actually did a decent rating this week. They got their extra 100,000 people for the big hotshot event they've been promoting. But it was AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite, September 20th. This was the Grand Slam event at Arthur Ashe Stadium. First year was 20,000 people. They filled it up. Last year was, what did you say, 13,000 something?
I think so, yeah.
This year they said they had a late ticket rush because there was only, 6,000 or so out. But they sent MJF to do every bit of local publicity they could get.
He was all over local
Was
TV.
he everywhere?
Yeah, he was on Channel 2 the other day. All of a sudden, I'm watching the news at 9 a.m., the local news, and there's MJF with John Elliott, the best local weather guy, and Cindy Shue, and they're having a fun talk while he's just completely obnoxious and rude to them while smiling at them. It's great.
Well, they had a late rush, but the problem is the crowd shots looked like a darkened stadium set up for a half of a crowd. So did we ever find out how many people they legitimately had there and how far they managed to pull this out of the toilet?
I'll look to see if there's a number. I had heard a little bit about a late rush too, but I've not heard any number attributed to it. You know, does that mean 1,000 people showed up and bought tickets? Does that mean 5,000 people? What does that mean?
Well, and you know, we've talked about in the old days, in the territory days especially, your advance was probably, a third of your house at best, right? In spot shows, not even so much. But now, almost every ticket is bought in advance, and walk-up is almost non-existent. It's completely reversed. But they did have a good surge at the end there, whatever that is for them. But again, they had the building. You could tell the stage was big. You can tell that one end of the building was closed off. And I'm wondering again now, are they getting into a Texas Stadium Von Erich Memorial situation where they needed the stadium the first year? They had a great show. They made a statement, sold it out, big crowd in New York, the home backyard of WWE. But now going to it every year, and they got to hustle to get a half a stadium. Wouldn't it be better going indoors and saving the goddamn... I guess there's a roof on this too, but you know what? I'm going to a building rather than a stadium if you can't get more than 10 or 12,000.
And I'm seeing things here, and again, I don't have an exact number, but I guess word is going around from various sources that it may have been over 11,000 people in the building, which is an incredible walk-up if that's the case. And like I said, MJF was at the Met game. He was all over local TV. He was everywhere. It's a wonderful way to stay home for the week, I have to say. If you're going to just have to do that stuff, you get to stay on Long Island.
Well, but also he's the only guy that can pull that off, to go to that many different places with different kinds of crowds and different atmospheres and be able to still be himself but pitch the show and sell tickets.
And listen, he was the most over guy on the show, but I guess the other issue is if they really had 11,000 people there, part of the issue is it didn't look like it. I kept looking for a good crowd shot just to kind of weigh how many people were there. It was so dark that you couldn't really tell it was even a stadium.
Well, I remember that I thought at least that it was lit up the first year.
It was. They had 20,000 people there. They lit it up.
Yeah, but couldn't they light up half of it? And we look, here's half of our stadium. We got the same amount on the other half. Take our word for it. I don't know.
Do you think next year for Dynamite Grand Slam, since it is an annual event, should AEW team up with one of the local hospitals? And, they could have like their ambulances there to get guys right out. And there are so many hospitals in the area. They're always in competition. Their commercials are all over TV.
Yeah.
Should that be someone AEW looks at as a potential sponsor?
Well, that might, because that way it would save, get ahead of the traffic on the way to the hospital as the show goes on. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to call some bullshit and shenanigans on a couple things. But let me mention that the opening match of this program was Claudio Castagnoli against Eddie Kingston for the Ring of Honor title, right? And Claudio was a Ring of Honor guy. Eddie Kingston spent a little bit of time there, but Claudio was in Ring of Honor for quite a while. They had the same kind of goddamn match that everybody else on his program has. Claudio can work. He can wrestle. The very first moves they did, they stood there and took turns with the chops and the forearms. Then they went to the floor for an extended period of time with no count out. Then they got back in the ring, and instead of wrestling, they did the Japanese strong style stuff. Then they had a fight on the ramp. Then they went to the break. When they came back, Claudio was getting heat on Kingston, and Kingston made a comeback. And again, every match is either modern Japanese style or what they believe it to be, or gymnastics, or a combination of whatever. They need producers that have the power to produce. Because I keep hearing that the producers or agents or whatever they term them, they're there to make suggestions but not give orders, apparently. And that the guys put their own matches together in large part. And then maybe the producer, well, here's the finish. Maybe you might get there this way. But they're doing this, and
it shows.
Then they were standing there taking turns, letting the other guy hit them again. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then Kingston is from New York, so he was over with the people. They were into it. I'm not saying they didn't enjoy Eddie Kingston. But Claudio hits a couple of big moves. Kingston keeps kicking out. And then Kingston got a false finish and got a big pop because he's over in New York. But after they went back and forth and did some shit, then everybody was kind of immobile for about 30 seconds. Kingston was standing there. Claudio was selling. And then Kingston just powerbombed him. 1, 2, 3. Big pop because it's Eddie Kingston in New York, but the finish just here. I'm going to grab him, pick him up, and powerbomb him. Boom, 1, 2, 3. After all this other shit they'd done. And then they shook hands. Because they're still doing the code of honor thing. And so apparently they're not mad at each other anymore for the reasons that they were never able to explain to us verbally to begin with. But before I talk about the code of honor, what'd you think of the match?
Thought it was all right. I'm not a big Claudio fan, and Kingston, I like his personality so much, but he seems to love doing certain things in matches that I'm just not into. And, again, like you said, everyone does the same kind of layout. You're going to see, and I hate you even call it yay boo, because that's not what it is anymore. It's just stand here and trade with me.
Yeah.
Because we saw someone do this in Japan 20 years ago, so we all have to keep doing this. And I don't like that. Now, let's look at the positives. The crowd was super into Eddie. This is what we said. You give him a world title win in New York, the crowd will go crazy. And it was a really cool moment, and I think people will remember the moment more than the match.
And what's going to happen when they go to Denver or Colorado Springs or Shively or wherever?
What do you mean, what's going to happen?
You said Eddie will get a big pop if you put the world title on him in New York. But how big of a pop is the Ring of Honor world title going to get anywhere else at this point?
Well, nowhere else. He's over. But again, it's more about how he's been used over and over again, starts and stops. But that's everyone's problem in AEW.
Well, with the Code of Honor, also, they did it here and are going to do it later on. The Code of Honor was the thing that Ring of Honor had come up, and I understand why they did it. And it was a marketing strategy that because the Ring of Honor from inception 2002 to, say, 2009, 8, 9, right before I started there when they got the HDNet television, it was a DVD company, a videotape company, the hardcore fans around the world ordering the technical wrestling extravaganza tapes. And so the Code of Honor, we're going to shake hands, with each other and show our sportsmanship because it's the audience. The only audience they had was people who wanted to see good matches on video. But then as they get television, as Kerry's getting pay-per-view, we got a pay-per-view deal and fucking wasn't worth shit. And then they didn't do others, but nevertheless, trying to get to a wider audience. Then that got in the way because the average person said, well, why are they shaking hands if they're so fucking mad? And so I inherited that as executive producer. And what I try to do with with Adam Pearce and with Delirious, and we did, was to make the people understand, make the code of honor something besides, okay, these fucking, guys are going to have a match where they try to kill each other and then they're going to shake each other's hand. You still needed heat, you still needed heels, you still needed villains, backstabbers. So when we had the tale of the tape, height, weight, years pro, code of honor, well, all the baby faces would say, yes, we vow to adhere to the code of honor and show sportsmanship and respect for our craft and our sport. And some of the heels would say no, because they were fucking pricks and assholes that didn't want to shake anybody's hand. And some of the heels would say yes, but that was because they were a cocky, arrogant, egotistical heels that would do it in a condescending fashion. And but we tried to make something out of it where, without just the announcer saying that guy's a heel and that guy's a babyface, it would be a more modern way of identifying who the heels and the baby faces are. If a guy's such a dick, he will not shake the hand of the person he's competed against afterward, right? Blah, blah, blah. And you could work with that. But I'll go ahead and blow the surprise here. I didn't care. Claudio and Kingston, nobody knew why they were pissed either. Anyway. But later on, Samoa Joe and MJF, they have this goddamn match where they almost kill each other. And then they shake hands. So I guess it's over with forever. Joe's not going to want to get even for not winning the fucking title in his first opportunity. Either that or he was just lying about the handshake. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, no, I see it. I mean, WWE just had some stuff with Brock and his handshakes just recently, but...
And he called that in the ring on his own, come to find out.
Well, who would fit better in AEW than someone who's just calling whatever they want to do in the ring?
Well, there you go. All right, I've vented enough about that.
Do you just not like the Code of Honor? Do you think it has any value today, like in 2023?
I think it does, but not when you have just had Samoa Joe choking out the fucking guy's friends and saying, I'm going to take everything from you. And conversely, MJF saying, Samoa Joe, I've held this grudge for you shoving me when I was an extra for 10 years or whatever. And they have one match, almost kill each other, and then shake hands.
Well, at
least Cody and Brock had 3.
Well, we will get to that match in a bit. I don't want to say anything else about it now.
All right. And speaking of people that are not shaking hands, Roderick Strong and Matt Taven and Mike Bennett and Adam Cole and the whole 9 yards, they've got Roddy in the hospital from last week, where he was taken to the hospital with his neck and the whole 9 yards, and Taven and Bennett are there again. And Cole bursts into the scene just in the nick of time, like he just got there moments after the camera turned on. And here, the problem I have with this is, yes, the manager can do the comedy, me or Heenan with the neck brace and malingering. But the top guys, not only can the top guys that are interacting with each other not be involved in it. In other words, yes, Taven and Bennett, if they'd be more serious, could support Roddy and it'd be heelish, right? He's hurt, he's been injured, whatever the fuck. But when Adam Cole, who's supposed to be a babyface and supposed to be a smart human being, comes in and he's buying all this shit that's so obviously tongue-in-cheek, and then Cole leaves Roddy to be at MJF's side, apparently, even though they said the VTR was last week, Cole had to leave so he could go back and be with MJF against Samoa Joe. But later on, when they're about to have the Samoa Joe match, he gets a call from Roddy, who's still in the hospital after a fucking week. Nobody's trying to be serious. Point is, if I'm with the Midnight Express in a goddamn neck brace and whining about how I've been injured by the fucking Rock and Roll Express, that's one thing. That's to get heat. If the Rock and Roll Express comes into the goddamn scene and is worried about my welfare, that means they're in on it, and it's all bullshit. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm not a fan of this comedy stuff. Was it that Adam Cole left MJF as they pulled up to the building to go to the hospital.
Apparently.
And then he came back. Because the question is Roddy Strong, he's in a New York hospital? Where were they last week?
I guess he's been transferred.
Right? How else would he, why would he be in a New York hospital?
It's for children, this thing. All right, so Jericho and Sammy had their match. And now apparently, because it's a big show, Sammy Guevara has a friend that's a rapper like everybody else, some fat guy, and it was really rotten, exceptionally rotten. And the people were sitting on their hands. Is this, I ask this every time, but certainly to God, this just had to be a friend of Sammy's and not like a professional rapper, right?
You say the exact same thing every single time there's a rapper on these shows. And every single time I tell you, I don't know. I actually don't know who this guy was.
He can't get paid to do this. He can't be he can get paid to stop doing it. But I can't imagine anybody paying him to do it.
Maybe they give him stock.
So, the deal with Jericho and Sammy is Jericho was, switched babyface because he was going to join the other heel group and leave all of his appreciators and stab him in the back. But that heel group stabbed him in the back, so he thought about the error of his ways. And Sammy has been the one to say, I'll always be there for you, but you are full of yourself, right? And there was a little needling back and forth, and they're going to have a match and just see what happens, right? So there's supposed to be some build amongst these friends before the tempers flare, one would think, right?
The booking of Chris Jericho, the Chris Jericho-led booking of Chris Jericho has been atrocious for a long time, and I said it a long time ago. There's a way to get value out of Chris Jericho, and it comes from not letting him book himself.
Okay, but point is that they shook hands to start the match. They did one spot with a shoulder tackle. Sammy did a nip up. They both slapped each other in the face and then started throwing punches the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, the match layout was stupid. What do you want me to tell you?
And so basically I zoned out on most of they went to the break. They came back. I saw Sammy do a backflip off the top to the floor right past Jericho, landed on his right knee and sold it kind of big for a second. And then Jericho went for his leap off the top rope to drop kick or clothesline or do whatever to the guy that's on the apron. And Sammy tried to stop him with a super kick. But Jericho landed flat-footed and stopped 2 feet short of Sammy's foot. And Jericho got the walls, and I'm writing, this is so long now. And they helped each other balance precariously on the top rope, and then Sammy did a cutter off the top for a 2 count. And then it was like at that point, I know they were trying to sell like they were exhausted. I'm not sure how much selling Jericho was doing and how much legitimacy there was, but it was like they were in quicksand. And then Sammy goes to do the backflip off the top rope, shooting star, whatever the fuck. And Jericho tries to jump up and catch him with the code breaker, and they kind of fell in a heap, but it was close enough that Jericho got the 3 count. So Jericho beats Sammy. And then Jericho offers Sammy his hand, and they shake and they hug. And then Sammy turns around and kicks Jericho in the balls. And out comes Don Fallis, and Sammy has joined the Don Fallis family. So Jericho had to beat him 1, 2, 3 so that then he could turn heel and join a what?
Was he going to turn if he beat Jericho?
I guess not. I guess if he won, he'd have been fine. But then Don must not have had very much confidence in him because Don was waiting right there to walk out. The point of if you're going to turn a fucking guy heel, why wouldn't Don come out and make the difference and Sammy beat Jericho? Rather than, okay, I'll beat him. Now he can kick me in the balls and then he joins the heel group after I've already beat him.
That's a total Jericho move. The guy's going to come out and cost you a match. How about we do it a different way? I beat Sammy, and then everything happens after I beat Sammy. The Don Callis, everything with it has been backwards. He accepted joining the group for it to be revealed that they were going to turn on him thinking he was going to reject the group. And then him and Sammy got kind of close again, while the other Jericho appreciators got mad at him. And then Sammy loses to him and immediately turns heel and his manager's just ready to come out. It's like they skip steps, necessary steps for things to make sense.
Well, here was a step that they took.
Obviously, you agree.
That made, again, we just talked about it a second ago. MJF and Adam Cole pull up in a sports car, and MJF cuts the promo on Samoa Joe in the match tonight. And, of course, Cole said he's going to be right there for MJF in his corner. But Cole gets a call from Roddy, and he says, "You're not going to die, dude," and he rushes out. And, again, I wrote, this is silly.
Yeah, why is he putting up with it? Why is Adam Cole putting up with it? He looks like a moron for doing it.
Yes, when opponents, or these are not technically opponents yet, but when opposite forces are cooperating in obviously unbelievable shit with each other and react, it kills the baby faces. It just does. So whatever the fuck. You know what the subject was? Coming out of the big Grand Slam, it wasn't the ratings. They did a little bit better in the ratings. It wasn't the quality of the show. Everybody was talking about the Moxley match, the Moxley incident, and trying to not only figure out exactly why it happened like it did, but then after we've heard more stories, explanations, whatever from the company, trying to figure out how the story they're telling fits what we all saw on live television. And again, a couple of days ago on the Drive-Thru, we said it had just happened the night before we were recording. We had seen the clip of the two pile driver-like maneuvers that Phoenix gave to Moxley, but we hadn't seen the match yet. Well, now we've seen the match, and now that we've heard the story they're claiming, none of this makes any sense. And not only did, by the way, you heard about the AEW Botches account on Twitter.
I did.
They got suspended because he put a clip up, and old Aubrey Don Stevens Ed apparently did their work on that account, got it taken down. Stevie Richards apparently has been doing some breakdowns on, I guess, his YouTube channel or whatever on different things that go on in wrestling. And I don't know his Patreon YouTube channel, pardon me, Stevie, but they got his YouTube or his Twitter clip taken down, copyright strike, where he was looking at the pile drivers in slow motion because somebody sent me a copy of the video that they had taken down. And you can see clearly Moxley's head hitting the fucking canvas on both of them. And Stevie Richards, go ahead.
I was going to say, dancing Stevie Richards, I believe, had neck issues and probably concussion issues. Everyone around ECW had concussion issues.
Well, yes, but Stevie has had serious neck surgery, and he's also a professional wrestler with 25 years experience, and he was breaking it down and going, what the fuck, and oh my God. And so they silenced him. They got that clip taken down. But it's out there, folks. A lot of them are out there because people are doing their own. This thing is being looked at like the Zapruder film. But here now, the pile drivers looked bad enough in the fact that Moxley changed the finish and put the guy over for the belt that he just won, the mascot title, the international title or whatever. Yeah, yank, yank, yank.
No, but seriously, let me stop you there. Think about that. That means a lot to Tony Khan. Tony Khan is the biggest believer in Orange Cassidy in the entire world. And he gave him that long title run. It was supposed to mean something that he lost it. And then he lost it to Moxley. Didn't even get a rematch. Moxley's like, fuck it, you win. The other guy wins.
You know what? That's the thing. I'm thinking he gave the fucking thing away. Because as we go through this match, I want you to tell me different about what the fuck was going on here. Because now the story has come out. It wasn't the two pile drivers where he got dropped on his head twice in a row. That wasn't it, according to Moxley and from the company. He was fine backstage, just a slight concussion, just minor brain damage. But what really...
Normal day.
Normal day. It was dope. But what really did the damage to him, they said, was the dive that Felix hit him with right at the start of the match. That's what rung his bell, as they say. And then later on he got foggier and decided he couldn't go on.
Well, that other one, remember they did the dive, the one that I thought, the first one looked bad when you watch it after you hear the story and you're looking for it. But the one that I thought looked bad instantly was the one where Moxley was draped over the guardrail and Phoenix, like, whatever.
No. Felix hurt himself worse on that one than Moxley.
Well, it looked like he was trying to leg drop him, but Moxley wasn't in a position to, but it ended up almost being like a shoot drop kick to the back of Moxley's head as Felix mixed everything.
No, watch better. Watch again in slow motion. Moxley, when he was draped over the rail, his head was supposed to be perpendicular to the ground or sticking out in the same direction so you could leg drop a guy in the back of the head, but he was leaned all the way over the thing. Felix jumped off the top rope and just slid off Moxley's back and landed on his feet and ass on the floor right past him.
Oh, see, when I watched it, I thought his foot hit Moxley in the head as he was going down because what was that? Like,
it doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't matter what you saw. No, because let's go through.
This is one of the greatest stupid matches in the history of wrestling. I'm so entertained by this match.
Let's go through what happened. So Moxley comes through the crowd and basically does his normal entrance, and then he goes to the stage, and the fight starts on the ramp with them standing there, letting each other hit each other with the forearms. And then within about the first 30 seconds, Moxley takes a little bump off to the floor, and Felix runs down the entrance ramp, cannonballs over the cameraman, and hits Moxley with his ass right in the fucking head and drives him to the ground. And Moxley bounces hard off the fucking ground. So the ass in the head was hard, and then the fucking landing on the ground was hard.
And he looked rocked. If you go back and watch it, Moxley looks rocked right away.
He normally has a goofy expression on his face, but this was even worse. But you could tell also because he couldn't get up. Because Felix tried to pick him up and throw him back in the ring, and Moxley's legs wouldn't work. They went to rubber. And he dropped back down. And then Felix tried to put him against the railing in front of the front row. And his legs went to rubber again. And now Felix is chopping him. I guess he's trying to wake him up, like slapping him around. You okay? And finally, he rolled him in the ring, and then they rang the bell to start the match. So, Brian, he legitimately was, Moxley being he, legitimately was injured or knocked goofy or concussed or whatever by what we can tell by that opening dive, right into his head. And I said that the other day. I said I'd rather take 25 pile drivers from Jerry Lawler or 25 tombstones from The Undertaker than let one of these fucking idiots dive off something onto me. Well, that's the first way he got hurt. But now they've started doing the fucking match, right? They've rung the bell. And you can tell that Moxley is still groggy because Felix started doing his ridiculous tumbling, but it's like his dance partner was a zombie. To where the fucking announcers were even saying, oh yeah, Moxley looks like he's been rocked or he's weak in condition, whatever. But then after a couple minutes, Moxley stopped Felix and started doing shit to him.
Yeah.
And now it was a regular match between not a regular wrestling match, but a regular Moxley-Felix match. They fought in the middle of the crowd. Nobody was even scared enough to back up. Did you see that? The fans were all bigger than both of them. They're out in the crowd, and everybody's like reaching in to pat him on the back instead of cowering like, don't hit me. So then Moxley pushes Felix off the railing into the front row on top of some kids and risks a lawsuit, and then hooks Felix with the double arm, draping him over the railing, gives double fingers to the camera, mouths the word fuck to the camera, to the floor camera, like an 8-year-old kid, and double arm DDT'd Felix on the floor. And then half-ass rolled him in and covered him and got a 2 count. And at this point, I'm like, what an unprofessional twat. But let's see. So the guy got a concussion, but right now he is just double arm suplexed the fucking guy on the floor while giving double fingers and mouthing fuck to the camera. So he's normal.
I don't need to use my brain to do my stupid shit.
And then Felix did a bunch of flips and got a 2 count. And then Moxley leveled him with a lariat and did another finger. He's got all the crudeness of Austin with none of the looks, talent, or personality. But then they go back to the floor. And then Felix again drops Moxley feet first over the guardrail into some kid's lap. And that's where Moxley was supposed to hang there until Felix went to the top rope and came off with the leg drop, but Moxley was just hanging over it. And there was nothing for Felix to drop, so he just went right down his back and landed on his ass in a fucking heap.
Yeah, by the way, there were other options for him, too. He could have found something else to do in that moment.
Anything. If you're gonna break the world high diving record by jumping off a 100-foot platform into a bucket of water and somebody moves the bucket, do you have to jump anyway? And then they went to the break because I wrote, good God, there's more of this. Because again, I thought, okay, the guy got hurt, he got rocked, impromptu finish, it probably didn't last long. No, now they're having this fucking match.
And I had to watch through the picture-in-picture because it looked like Moxley was rocked and they just kept doing heavier and heavier shit to each other.
Yes, and in picture-in-picture, Moxley was killing him. He hit him with a pile driver. He's chopping him. And then, again, they come back from the break, and Felix hit a double stomp off the top rope for a 2 count. And then they went to the ramp, and Moxley curb stomped Felix on the ramp, and the fans started singing Seth's song when he did the curb stomp. And then Moxley hit a pile driver on him and got a 2 count. And then he beat him up some more. And then they went into the closing, as it turned out it would be the closing sequence. Moxley goes up to superplex Felix off the top, right? And Felix knocks Moxley off to the mat. The bump looked fine. He didn't hit his head. As soon as he landed, Moxley placed himself perfectly for the senton that was coming, had his arms into his sides, till he knew exactly what was going on. Felix hit the senton off the top, and it wasn't like a Jeff Hardy, I'm just going to land on your ass. He did it right. He didn't cover. He pulled Moxley right up, and that's where he did the first sit-out powerbomb. And that's what we talked about on the program a couple of days ago. Well, not powerbomb, a sit-out pile driver. I'm sorry. And that's what we talked about, on the show a couple of days ago, is that he put him up over his shoulder. And not only is Moxley a taller guy, so his head's than Felix, so his head's going to be lower, but also he didn't do what you do in any variation of that. He didn't keep his legs together to give Moxley the cushion of his shoulders on the guy's thighs. His legs were spread. And in the slow-mo, you see him, he drops him on his fucking head. But this is what Moxley said. Oh, the pile drivers were fine. It was the dive at the first of the match. Okay, for 10 minutes, they were doing their match, and Moxley was kicking the shit out of this guy. And suddenly, he picks him up, he gives him this pile driver, he covers him, the referee goes to count, corpse referee, Rick Knox, useless. The referee counts 1, 2, Moxley doesn't move a muscle. A foot doesn't come up. A hand, a shoulder, nothing. And the referee holds up at 2.9, and the crowd starts booing. And then Moxley says something. You see him say something even before the referee starts counting. But he counted and held up. And then he says something else. while the crowd is booing. And then somehow out of that, Felix jerks him up and picks him up and gives him another one of what he's just given him. And it looked like his head hit again. 1, 2, 3. Now, we know this was not the finish. Moxley was not supposed to lose the title nor to lose the match. We know that Moxley made the decision to not win the match because he got hurt. But now they're trying to claim that it was because he got hurt at the start of the match when he had done all this shit and was in full possession of his, if not his faculties, there's a line there somewhere, but his physical presence in the match was fine. He was pile driving this guy. He was doing all this other shit. And then suddenly, boom, he gets hit with that move, and he decides then, I'm not going to kick out. I've kicked out everything else. He's kicked out all my shit in the last 10 minutes, but I ain't going to kick out now. And then the referee still didn't count it. So we're expected to believe that Moxley said, give me another one of those? Or did he just say, fuck it, beat me, I'm hurt? And instead of just covering the guy or dropping an elbow, Felix is a moron and has to pick him up and drop him on his head again. And why did Moxley go? I would have been going, fuck you. I'm staying down here. And what was the referee thinking? It was the referee's fault that the match didn't end, even though it was not the right finish, that it didn't end with the first pile driver because the referee didn't do his job. When nobody kicked out, he still didn't count. He exposed the business in front of all those people. It wasn't even close. It wasn't a judgment call. Nobody was fucking moving. So he fucked up. Felix fucked up at least 2 times, maybe 3, depending on how many concussions he gave Moxley. And if Moxley was that hurt at the start, but determined to go through with the rest of the match because it was live television and the show must go on, then why did he do another 10 minutes and then just lay down and said, fuck it, beat me for this fucking thing, I'm done? What the fuck is going on here?
And I just rewatched the part I told you about where he was going for the leg drop with Moxley over the apron. It almost looked like he kicked him. I think maybe I was wrong where he kicked him, but his whole body lands against the back of Moxley's head, pushing it against the barricade. So Moxley's head is getting hit all over the place.
Well, then maybe that's number 4. They probably looked at Moxley's head and said, fuck, we can't damage that.
Rick Knox, if you watch any of his matches, specifically this one, and just try to think to yourself, I'm going to ignore the wrestling. I'm going to focus on him. What is he doing? Or try to do commentary. Like, what would the referee's commentary be? What is he doing out there? Why is he refereeing anyone's matches except for the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla kids?
Remember the Dork Order guy? They jumped off the top rope and landed on his head and knocked him out. He was stiff in the ring and the 6-man was still going on and they just drug him to the side and kept going. Knox was the referee in that one too. And he couldn't even impart, hey, there's a guy here that's goddamn going into convulsions. Maybe we ought to do a little injury timeout.
If you're Tony Khan, even though Moxley, I guess they're saying that he wasn't really that badly hurt after the fact, how pissed are you that he decided to call an audible and give up the belt? This isn't Harley Race in Australia thinking the news wouldn't get out.
Well, but here's the thing. And I don't know how Moxley, if this is a story he made up to explain that, to take the heat off Felix's pile driver, because, well, anything can happen with one of these dives, but the pile driver is just reckless. But if I was Tony Khan and I saw that finish and I'm like, oh, they changed my deal, right? I would know something was wrong with somebody if they came back and said, yeah, he dropped me on my fucking head and I just couldn't get up. Tony, I'm sorry. I would be mad at Felix, and I'd be mad then at the referee for holding up the count and exposing the business in front of all those people. And then I would be mad at Felix again for dropping him on his head again, but I wouldn't be mad at Moxley because he got dropped on his head. However, if Moxley was to come back and say to me, yeah, on that dive at the start of the thing, he landed on my head. I hit the ground. I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And I finally just got to the point. I said, you stupid motherfucker. It took you 10 minutes to figure that out. You could have got back in the ring and small packaged him and kept the fucking belt and said you were hurt and there'd be no heat. But if you get hurt then, wrestle 10 more minutes so you can get all your shit in, and then decide you can't get up and drop my fucking belt to this guy and screw up my plans. Fuck you, you idiot. There was plenty of chances for people to get out of that if the only injury was the flip dive. Or if they're lying and he dropped him on his head and rung his bell and he couldn't fucking get up, then they ought to come out and say that, because that makes a lot more sense than, oh, I got brain damage, but I decided to do all my shit for 10 more minutes where I could have got out of this thing at any point, but instead I decided to be a fucking hero and go until he dropped me on my head again. And that time I couldn't get up.
A concussion is a concussion. It's not like, oh, I just had a tiny concussion. No, it's a concussion.
So that's what I'm saying is none of this makes any sense with the story that they're telling. I don't believe he should have continued any longer than he absolutely had to when he got his bell rung, which is why that the fault is on Moxley. If he was injured so badly in one of the first moves of the match that he went another 10 minutes and then lost the belt because he couldn't continue, or more likely because he got dropped on his head a fucking again.
And we're pretty sure that the words he said after the first pile driver weren't, let's do that again.
I don't see how that would have been a thing he would have said. And I know he's a different kind of cat. But no, I don't.
Meow.
Do that again, I don't think would have come up. Like I could see beat me, pin me, I'm hurt. Stop this thing.
I'm a different kind of cat. Woof, woof.
Meow. Well, anyway, so that's why I say, and then the doctor came in to check on him, and then they wouldn't shoot him with the camera. They were shooting the happy victor, the new international champion. But either it was the pile driver or Moxley just said, fuck it, I'm going to put him over and give it to him. Because that's the only explanation. I'm sorry, you can't go and have that match that they had for 10 more minutes, and then if you get a safe move done to you and just decide at that point, fuck, I can't get back up.
I can't feel my legs. Pile drive me.
Bring me back to my senses. All right, and moving on.
Hey, one last thing on this. Just, again, it's another AEW event that in a lot of ways should be looked at as a success, especially if they had a big walk-up. But the stories coming out of it aren't about the success of the show. It's about, did Moxley get hurt?
Yeah. And come to find out, again, as we mentioned earlier, the luck of fools and plumbers, Moxley's okay and walking around, and Adam Cole went to the hospital to do a run-in. We'll get there in a second.
He came from the hospital, and he had to go to the hospital.
And he had to go right back. They ought to have a shuttle service. And really, that's the thing.
I told you.
Well, no, instead of doing a sponsorship with the hospital or ambulance, just have a shuttle bus service, regular trips leaving for the hospital on the hour.
This segment is brought to you by Mount Sinai.
So the women's title, now the cancer's been cut out. Now there'll be no more problems. Toni Storm wrestled Saraya, and Toni Storm's entrance is great, and I like her, and I don't give a shit about Saraya. And Toni missed an ass and a face spot, and Saraya tried to do some kind of draping DDT, and they fell in a crumpled heap. 1, 2, 3. Saraya retains.
Fans deflated. The fans thought they had Toni going over for the belt a little earlier. They were ready for the pop, and they didn't get it right after she kissed Saraya. You would think if you're going to do it in front of a stadium, get a big pop, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
Instead, Toni Storm, who's been getting a renewed push and renewed interest from the fans, loses.
But Saraya, she's
It's 1 year of Saraya. She debuted last year at Grand Slam.
Yeah, she's a star, so you got to keep her happy, I guess. All right, the main event was for the AEW Championship, and we've been looking forward to this. MJF and Samoa Joe, because Samoa Joe has been acting like the only legitimate, serious heel in the company, and MJF he's the man, he's the star. And have you noticed, by the way, the TNT or TBS titles, none of them mean anything in this company, but the Ring of Honor World TV Champion is in the main event challenging for the AEW title.
And that AEW World Champion is also one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions.
Which means nothing except as a byproduct of his little engagement with Adam Cole. Anyway, Joe did the entrance, and then MJF remade the Mean Joe Green Coca-Cola ad.
Well, I think it was more of a spoof of the Bret Hart one from the WWF in the 90s.
Oh, I forgot they did that too. Well, it was a spoof of a commercial. But MJF gave the kid his scarf and then whispered in his ear and walked off, and the kid asked his dad, "Am I adopted?" Anyway, but here's the thing. Okay, that's fine for MJF because, again, that kind of personality stuff, it fits him perfectly. They came back to the announcers for a react, and Tony Schiavone's laughing. Oh, that was funny. That's exactly what the announcers don't say. Even if it's the baby face, you don't, ha, that was funny. Like we came up with that in a production meeting, and we knew that it would tickle everybody. You're supposed to go, oh, that irascible MJF, or that, you can't control him or whatever, but
yeah, Schiavone was yelling that he was a prick on TV for years.
Yes, and now said, oh, that was funny. You're not supposed to get that fucking far gone either way. Anyway, so MJF comes out with the entrance has the logos and the style of every New York sports team on, and Joe's got heat, and MJF gets the hometown pop, and Cole is not in the corner of MJF because Roddy had called earlier to say that he was dying. And then they started having their match. And again, a bigger, intimidating, physically impressive heel that looks like a badass that wants to hurt you. And MJF, he not only can sell, but also he got hope spots in with ducks and eye pokes and shit that MJF would do. And it gets a cheer when he breaks the rules against a heel like that. And they gave him some time. They rang the bell with about fucking 18 minutes or so on the air. They did a little bit, went to a break, but then they came back and they were uninterrupted at that point. And they did a lot of back and forth, but Joe, again, is a serious heel. He ripped the baseball shirt off and snotted on it. And, he'd done all this shit, and MJF would fight back underneath, but Joe would constantly level him, and then finally MJF starts hulking up and gets the fans up. And MJF's come back because he doesn't just need to do goddamn moves to fucking Samoa Joe. He did 10 heads into the turnbuckles, 9 punches, and a head bite. And got a big pop. And then when he milked the kangaroo kick, the fans lost their shit over it. And he hit it. And Joe went to the floor. MJF goes for the dive. Joe stops him with a kick and hits the Death Valley driver on the apron, which is not safe. And it didn't look too fucking safe to me. And then Joe pulled out a table and rock bottomed him through the table and got a 2 count. And at this point, I'm liking the match, but they're going too far. It's like Joe pulls the pads off the floor and goes for a power bomb. And MJF bites his leg to get out of it, but Joe hits him with a pile driver on the concrete. And Joe clears the doctors away from him and rolls him in. 2 count. I mean, what else? It's a baseball bat to the head at this point. The only thing So they're doing the big moves and they're selling them and they're allowing time, but it's just at some point, how many things can you kick out of? And then MJF flipped out and got a sit out power bomb for a 2 count. And they got a big pop out of that. They did the yay boo in the middle. And then they went into it where Joe got the sleeper. MJF grabbed the referee and did the mule kick to Joe in the nuts. And then got his diamond ring. But as he's going for the punch, Joe pulls the referee in front of him. And the referee sees the ring and takes it away. And then Joe kicks MJF in the balls. But he'd just been kicked in the balls 12 seconds beforehand. It's a little quick. The balls don't mean what they used to. It's good stuff. But they're almost like they're wearing suits of armor. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. And I think that's one of the problems a lot of the times with matches I like, where all of a sudden, there are some songs that for no reason have a rapper in the middle of it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but everyone acts like it always does. No matter what the match is, it seems like too often than not, if it's a big match, there's going to be a while on the floor, and they're going to have a table involved.
Well, and that's, so anyway, Joe got the sleeper, and MJF is dwindling. But then here comes Adam Cole running back from the hospital. And he runs down the ramp and jumps off the ramp past the cameraman and came up limping. And I don't know if his foot or ankle or whatever, but he's trying to rally MJF, and MJF bites his way out of the sleeper. The referee gets kind of knocked to the floor. MJF gets a piece of tape, wraps it around Joe's neck, and then puts the chin lock on him from around and choked Joe out. I understand what they're trying to do. MJF wins with a heel tactic because he's a heel at heart. But you're talking about we've been throwing people through tables and pile driving them on their heads and hitting them with all these goddamn moves, and you just choked somebody out with athletic tape. Help me. So, I like the match, not everything in it, the right result, but then they're celebrating and Adam's still limping, and that's where, as we referred to earlier, Joe shoves Adam Cole out of the way, looks at MJF and offers him his hand, and they shake. So, I guess that's over forever.
That's what I was going to say. I was thinking, okay, this is the beginning of a series of matches or a feud, and then there was that with nothing after it. Is that the end? Is there any way they can come back and do anything?
Apparently not. I mean, he went in a week. He went from, I'm going to take everything from you, I'm going to choke out all your friends and kill your dog or whatever, to, okay, well, you beat me and you cheated, but you got my respect for that. So now we're not mad no more.
Your friend broke his foot, so I feel like we're square.
Yeah. He did do some damage to people close to MJF, indirectly at least. But that's why I would have preferred to have seen Joe come to his senses on the floor after having been choked out, if he had to be choked out by a piece of athletic tape, and see Cole and MJF in there and make the mean face and swear this isn't over. And then it wouldn't be over. But now it's over.
MJF's super over. I mean, clearly not just that it's in New York. He's the most over wrestler in the company right now, wouldn't you say?
I would have to, because, Punk's gone and nobody else is getting this kind of reaction and in the important spots and carrying the ball.
And that was one of the reasons why I was hoping they would extend him and Joe, because other than tag team stuff, and that's now out the window if Cole's hurt, I was hoping that him and Joe would prolong the fact that there aren't too many other fresh opponents that seem interesting right now for MJF. And instead, Swami's going.
Well, and back to the drawing board. Maybe Swami is volunteering to be the opponent. Okay, yeah, who's next? Not just for Goldberg, but for MJF.
Yeah, Swami's really going nuts right now. I'm trying to look at the Outdoor camera. Oh, it's FedEx. Thanks, FedEx. There's a free spot for you. Jim, I know we're not going to watch it, but real quick, can I give you the matches you missed for AEW Grand Slam Rampage? It was a special 2-hour Rampage.
Oh, good Lord. Okay, sure, fine.
Here are the results of the matches you missed. Sting and Darby Allin defeated Luchasaurus and Christian Cage. Chris Statlander, Orange Cassidy, and Hook versus, does it have the result? Versus Anna Jay, Angelo Parker, and Matt Menard.
Wow.
A Menage a Con, as they call it in AEW. I don't see the result here. I guess the babyfaces won.
Lack of interest.
The babyfaces won. There was a QTV segment, a Don Callis interview with Takeshita, which led to Sammy coming out and then Jericho coming out. And then Kenny Omega, who was in Queens apparently, came out.
There's a line in there somewhere, but we're running low on time.
And apparently they're setting up for Wrestle Dream, a match where it'll be Omega, Jericho, and Kota Ibushi versus the Don Callis family.
Oh, good Lord.
In a match where the number one contenders for the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship would be crowned, the Righteous, Vincent and Dutch, defeated the Hardy Boys, the Best Friends, and surprisingly, the Kingdom, Matt Taven and Mike Bennett. I was about to say Matt Taven and Max Sennett. Matt Taven and Mike Bennett to become the number one contenders. So instead of the Kingdom versus MJF and Cole, it is the Righteous set up for MJF and Cole.
Well, Dutch Mantel and some guy named Vinny. Is that what I heard?
That is something that you heard there. And then the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn defeated the Dark Order. Julia Hart defeated Sky Blue. Mike Santana defeated Dirty Bulk Bronson, formerly a Bear.
Formerly a Bear, now just a Bulk.
Dirty Bulk. And finally, the Elite, the Young Bucks and Hangman Adam Page, defeated the Mogul Embassy of Brian Cage, Bishop Khan, and Toa Leone. I was about to say it the way you say it.
Tia Leone.
Toa Leone with Prince Nana to win the Ring of Honor World Six-Man Tag Titles. So congratulations to the Elite, the new Ring of Honor Six-Man Tag Team Champions.
So they lost their other self-made belts so they could get some more self-made belts.
Why would you create a trios division and then have them win the other trios title? Oh, well, that was AEW Rampage that we didn't watch.
But let's go back to the Dynamite for a second, because they did a rating. We got to put them over. We got to give them some applause. They actually got over 900,000 for the first time in ages and eons with their big Arthur Ashe Stadium extravaganza. And this time, they had a main event that people actually would want to see and be interested in. So I'm wondering, did they keep their audience through the rest of this fiasco to get there? Or did it do the same thing as it does every week when they have the gymnasts, the play wrestlers, the trampoline cowboys, and the Cucamonga kids in the last spot?
Well, this week's AEW Dynamite, September 20th on TBS, Grand Slam did 984,000 viewers on average.
So they picked up pretty much exactly 100,000 people from where they've been stuck at the last several weeks. How did they make the most of it?
These were compiled by WrestleNomics, Q1, 8 to 8:15 p.m. Claudio Castagnoli versus Eddie Kingston with picture-in-picture, 982,000 viewers.
Okay, in this case, then it sounds to me like they may be going to keep some audience.
Segment 2, 8:15 to 8:30 p.m. The continuation of Kingston versus Castagnoli, the post-match, the Kingdom Roddy Strong Adam Cole Hospital segment. Should that have been later in the show? Did they mess up the order of the things? Should that have been after Cole left MJF? Well, whatever. An ad break and Christian Cage's backstage promo. 1,004,000 viewers.
Geez, okay, they picked up 22,000 in the second quarter. That usually does not happen, and that's the first time they've seen seven figures in a while.
Quarter 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. Chris Jericho versus Sammy Guevara with picture-in-picture, 989,000 viewers.
And 11, 15,000, normal fluctuation at this point. It's pretty much the same audience.
Segment 4, quarter 4, 8:45 to 9 p.m. The continuation of Jericho versus Guevara with the post-match heel turn and Don Callis, the MJF backstage promo, an ad break, and the start of Jon Moxley versus Phoenix. 1,017,000 viewers.
Okay, so now 11, 28,000. So they have been in a range of 18, 35,000 for the entire first hour. That's very good for AEW and against normal trends.
The big 9 o'clock hour, quarter 5, 9 to 9:15 p.m. Moxley versus Phoenix continued. It is Phoenix, excuse me. You've got me confused. Moxley versus Phoenix continued.
I know what his name is.
With picture-in-picture and Samoa Joe's backstage promo and an ad break. 960,000 viewers.
Okay, that's where they tuned in maybe the extra ones at the top of the hour, and they saw enough of the plumber, and they said, well, 57,000 of us will take off, but there's the option to come back for the main event that we might want to see.
And this is usually where everything starts trending downwards. Quarter 6, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. The Kingdom, the Righteous video. That's what it says. The Kingdom. Oh, I guess the Kingdom is, when you call the other team the Righteous and the other one's the Kingdom, you can't tell what's going. It just says the Kingdom, the Righteous. The Kingdom video.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
The Righteous video. Saraya versus Toni Storm with picture-in-picture and the post-match. 938,000 viewers.
And not as bad as it could have been. Only another 22,000, and it's the girl spot, and it's the death spot in the normal program where they start leaving.
Quarter 7, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. It says video. I don't know what the video is, but video, ad break, and MJF versus Samoa Joe. 954,000 viewers.
And there they get 16,000 back, and hopefully can finish strong. The entirety of the last quarter hour was all them. So what did we finish up at?
And we have a little bit of an overrun, and this may be an example where we should look at the overrun here.
Because I think, it was about 5 minutes, wasn't it?
It's a 4-minute overrun, plus, as this is going up, the key demo's going up. But anyway, quarter 8, 9:45 to 10 p.m., the continuation of Samoa Joe versus MJF with picture-in-picture. 1,014,000 viewers, 489,000 in the key demo, the high point, not counting the 4-minute overrun, which is 1,048,000 viewers.
Son of a... So...
And because of the trend upwards, that's not one of these examples of people just tuning in for the next show, I don't think.
Yeah. It's not just Wednesday night. It's what they put on Wednesday night. The 200,000 viewers or more don't have to bail out on Wednesday night. You just got to put a match in the main event spot that they actually want to see instead of the self-indulgent EVPs and the flippers and floppers. And they've seen an entire program of that horse shit. This time there was a match that was a destination that they wanted to see. They knew it was going to be good. They didn't know what was going to happen. And they were interested. And not only did they hold the audience, but for the first time ever, or certainly in recent memory, on a Wednesday night, they had more people at the end of the show than they did at the start. So they ought to be kissing MJF and Samoa Joe's asses.
They may have done a better job of promoting Grand Slam than they have anything else in a while. Especially, like I said, I can only base the local media stuff based on what I've seen, and MJF was all over the place. But that wouldn't mean an extra few thousand, 100,000 people watching a TV show.
Well, actually, think about this. The size of the New York market if he instigated 5,000 people with the last minute publicity to come and buy a ticket to go to the event in person, all those people that saw it, it wasn't either like, I'm going to go buy a ticket and go in person, or I don't give a shit about this and I never want to think about it again. They may have said, well, fuck, I'll just watch it on TV. You could 40 or 50,000 viewers in the New York television market with those numbers is not a goddamn significant portion of the audience. So that could have been part of the issue.
Should MJF insist on being the highest paid person in that company?
Now that Punk's gone, he should.
Seriously. Is there anyone else who should be in the conversation?
I don't see who. You've got an unprofessional fucking idiot that gets dropped on his head and drops unscheduled belts and goes to rehab at various points in time and flips fingers on your show and says fuck, puts fuck on his shirt, looks like a piece of shit and can't work, is a joke. Or you got Jericho, who's nearing 60. He's closer to 60 than he is to 40, isn't he?
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Math don't lie, baby. Or you got MJF.
And if I'm WWE, MJF's the one guy in that company I want more than anyone else.
I want him more than a sick man wants penicillin, because and he's young and you got all that time, and he doesn't have to be a wrestler. And in the WWE, it's more important than anywhere else that you have all the outside the ring skills. He could be an announcer. He could be a manager. He could be a fucking personality. He could be a goddamn movie star. He could be the Monroes calling me to get paid.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we can keep going, or we could jump in the time machine. It's up to you.
I think you better jump in the time machine, Stewie.